So if you have ever asked yourself what's the point of getting motorcycle boots, or the more complicated question of what kind of boots do I even need, don't worry guys, because today we have you covered. So anyone that's gone down on a motorcycle while only wearing street boots or work boots is going to have a story to tell, but typically the moral is always the same. I should have worn motorcycle boots. And that's because these are made specifically for those extra dangers and hazards that come with motorcycle riding. And obviously they offer protection, which your typical shoes and work boots just can't give you. Now, when you're looking at these boots, it can be kind of difficult to figure out what you need, what your price point is, what material is good, and so on and so on. So today what we've done is we've broken it down into 4 distinct categories, and we're also going to be taking a look at some of the materials and stuff like that you should be keeping an eye out for when just looking at any kind of boot. So the 4 categories, we have off-road, we have the street come riding boots, adventure come touring boots, and then sports come racing boots. So 4 pretty distinct categories, and this is going to cover pretty much anyone who's riding a motorcycle bike. Don't forget as well guys that you can see reviews of gear like this live. You can talk with me live and more in our live store. So you can catch that every Wednesday, and make sure to check out championhelmets.com/live store if you want to learn more. So here we've come to our first group of boots. We have sports come racing boots, and these are designed for people who want to go fast, whether it be on the road or on the track. And because we're going fast, we want extra protection. You always want protection on a motorcycle boot, pretty standard, but on these ones you want to have that extra abrasion resistance and impact absorption, because going faster is obviously going to increase your risk and increase the chance of bigger impacts and so on. With these boots though, we can't simply just slap on metal or steel plates all over the boot because that'll make it heavy, but we do have extra armor, so keep in mind that weight can be a big consideration. If you're racing especially, you don't want to be slowed down, you don't want to be literally weighed down, so try to get something that's light, and something with like materials here. We have on the D1, we have this lighter material which is lighter than steel, and that is the stuff you should be looking out for, just to keep that weight down, keep your comfort and your speed up. So something else to consider when looking at racing boots is going to be heat resistance, because when you're pushing your bike as hard as you can and you're gripping it as hard as you can as well, it's going to put you pretty close to the hot parts of your bike. So a little bit of extra protection here is going to help to just keep that heat a little bit further away from your foot and keep you a bit more comfortable. On these ones here from Alpinestars, the Supertex, you have it going all the way up the boot as well. So do keep that in mind. It's something just to look out for that can really help with your comfort. When it comes down to armor as well, on racing boots you typically get a toe slider as well. You get extra reinforcements, stuff like that. Another slider here, like resistance to abrasion and also impact absorption is going to be top. So keep that in mind. Also, when you look at boots, more premium boots will have something like carbon fiber, more expensive lightweight materials when it comes to sliders and protection overall, whereas you might get more TPU and steel on less premium boots. You should try as well to always get a longer boot, something that at least comes up past your ankles to your shin. Calf boots also great because you want to have that extra protection. You want to make sure that you're protecting not only your foot, but as well as your ankle and your shin if possible. So something like the Dainese axial D1s here, they have this axial system. Let me just open this boot up. And this is going to give you ankle support, which is what you need. You can see that system there, and it's got carbon fiber. So it's very strong material, but basically it's going to make sure that your foot is going to move like this, you know, the way it's meant to, and not from side to side. It's got very little give there, and this is like going to really protect your ankle. Also, look out for sole protection. So having a reinforced sole is great. It's going to help you a lot when it comes to keeping your foot in one piece, or at least bending in the correct way. And when you're racing, ventilation is also going to be something you can really consider. So with this one here, you can open up this vent, which is I think pretty cool. So you get extra ventilation, you can get perforated boots and so on. So now we're on to the next category. We have touring boots and more adventure boots. And these are going to be kind of similar, and that's why they're in the same category. Basically, touring boots is going to be great for people who don't want to set land speed records and want a bit more comfort, perhaps a bit more versatility as well, whereas adventure boots are going to be like a splitting the difference between touring boots and cross boots, which we will see a little bit later on. These boots will be a bit more bulky, a little bit stronger, a little bit yeah, a little bit more all-round kind of like tough boots, whereas these will be a little bit sleeker, typically kind of the stuff that's not going to stand out too much when you get off your bike and go for a walk. And yes, you'll be able to walk in these boots for the most part if that's what you want to do, because they're going to be a bit more versatile and, you know, just a bit more of a balance between that comfort and protection. So these boots are also going to typically be good when it comes to sunny weather and wet weather, and that's just where that versatility all comes in. So when it comes to protection, typically it's going to be a bit more subtle on these boots. You know, these ones accepted, although it's not as pronounced on these boots with armor and so on as with cross boots. It's a bit less, but on these ones especially, you don't see a whole lot here. You get this, but for the rest, it looks a lot like a normal boot, which you can see anyone walking down the road wearing. It is typically a bit higher than a lot of shoes, you know, at least the ones that I wear, but for the most part, all the protection is going to be hidden within the boot. It's going to be a bit more rigid, and also that material is going to be good for abrasion resistance. So it's going to be a very subtle kind of protection. So you can take this to the office, you can walk around all day in it after you've been commuting, or you can walk around the pub if you want after a day of touring. And it shouldn't really cause any problems. No one's really going to bat an eye for a lot of these boots. So that's going to be like the advantage of a touring boot. It's got that versatility, it's got that extra comfort, but also that protection built in. But keep an eye out as well for materials such as Gore-Tex, which are good for waterproofing. So you can see here we have Gore-Tex on that boot. This one has a Gore-Tex little tag. This one has that same tag, and this one has a little, like a little badge on it. So Gore-Tex is a great kind of fabric when it comes to keeping you dry and keeping that water out, but also keep an eye out for other materials and so on. So now riding shoes are going to be very similar to sports boots or touring boots or so on, except it's not going to have that extra protection going up. Instead, it's going to stop around your ankle. And you can see here, this, for example, is going to be the Street Biker Air from Dainese. It looks just like a normal sneaker for the most part. And when it comes to protection, it's very well hidden, but on this boot as well, you don't get a whole lot of protection. You get a bit of abrasion resistance from a couple plates here, but for the rest, you know, it's quite soft, it's quite flexible, but this is going to be pretty rigid at the sole. So this is going to be really a blend of comfort and kind of versatility at the cost of protection, because you don't protect your ankle, you don't protect your calf or your shin, which is, you know, pretty important when you go down. This, though, is going to be the Dino from Dainese, the Dino Pro, and it's going to be very similar to the actual D1s. So it's going to have the big slider, it's going to have a very similar kind of sole, very strong, rigid sole, a bit more protection on the ankle, actually quite a lot more protection on the ankle than these ones, but you still don't get that axial pro system. So while you can't really bend this out to the side, above that, it's fair game. Who knows what's going to happen? So that's the whole thing with these riding shoes. You have to balance your comfort and what you're getting versus the disadvantage of not having that extra ankle support, or also higher up that shin and calf protection. Now, off-road boots are pretty self-explanatory. You're meant to ride them off-road. You can still ride with these boots on when you're riding on the road, but they're going to work best in that off-road situation. They are fairly heavy, they give a lot of protection, they are pretty big and bulky, and you know, so that's why they're a little bit better for off-road situations. They're meant to handle a lot of different terrain, a lot of different things, still come out on top, take a beating, but still protect you. And what's cool with these boots is that you can get some that are going to be replaceable, or replaceable parts I should say. So if something gets damaged, you can take that off, no problem, you can put a new one on, and you're still going to get the same level of protection from your boot, but also just a little bit more longevity. So keep that out, especially on more premium boots. It's a great thing to have. It's going to really have some stuff to keep you in your boot, like these ones have big buckles on this one. Ventilation is going to be a bit of an issue though. Typically, it's going to get hot and sweaty when you're out riding off-road, but these need to protect you in weather conditions such as rain as well as sun. So it's going to be a little bit difficult when it comes to ventilation. So on these boots from Sidi, for example, the Crossfires, you get ventilation here, at the back, a little bit on the side here, but for ventilation, you don't get a whole lot. On these Alpinestars Tech 10s, you don't get a whole lot at all. You can see just like a little bit at the back, but for the most part, these are pretty well closed up boots, a little bit on the front as well. And you'll see these are high boots. They're the highest ones that I'm showing, and that's because they're going to give you that extra protection. You're going to have a lot of protection on your shin, really just protecting your entire leg. So like I said, these are expected to take punishment, keep on going, and keep you safe. So now that we've covered those categories, I have two boots with me. Sidi Crossfire 3's actual D1 here, off-road, and going to be a racing boot. Now, when you come and look at materials, it's going to really depend on the purpose. So simply saying that one material is better than the other is not always correct, which is pretty interesting with boots. So for instance, with this boot, leather, magnesium, toe slider, carbon fiber in the boot, high-end premium materials. Then we have this boot here, Sidi Crossfire 3. It's made out of a lot of TPU. TPU, typically you might think, is going to be a more low-end material. But these are both premium boots, which are at the best in their classes when it comes to off-roading and racing boots, despite the fact this is made largely out of TPU. So different materials have different uses. This is going to be this magnesium is good for sliding and lightweight, so it's going to be good against abrasion. Whereas this TPU is going to be better at absorbing impact, taking shocks, and it's also going to be flexible. Sections are going to be easy to remove, and so on. So it's different purposes, different kind of materials. Like this is made out of leather. Leather sounds great, but you might be better off getting a boot which is made out of a high water resistance material, or a boot that is made out of a high abrasion resistant material, which is better than leather. So do keep that in mind and make sure you research what is the purpose of your boot and how that material directly impacts it. So the sole of a boot is going to be the literal sole of a boot. It's going to be the contact point between you and the rest of the world, so you want it to be pretty good. Now there's a few things you should look out for. Number one is going to be anti-slip. You don't want to put your foot down at a traffic light in your garage and then just have your foot slide out and then fall down with your bike on your leg in weird angles or anything like that. It can be painful and also expensive. So anti-slip is great. Anything that's going to not slip in oil, top. After that, consider what your shoe is or your boot is going to be used for. If you're just going to be walking around most of the day, sure. Something like this with a pretty kind of like sneakery, kind of soft tread is great. If you're going off-road, like you typically might with an adventure boot, then you want something with a bit more tread on it, something that's going to grip a bit more. Then remember as well how you're going to ride. If you're going to be in a very tucked position, you might want to have boots with a sole which is kind of like adapted to that, something which is going to give you a bit more protection but also comfort. And then of course protection, guys. You want to make sure you have a boot that's not going to be too flexible. Like this one is very flexible. It's not going to give you a whole lot of safety, but there is still some rigidity to it, whereas this one, man, is it tough. I can't do a whole lot of bending with this one. So this will be comfortable to walk in, and this one won't, but this will give you more protection than this one will. So you got to balance that out and remember what your purpose is, and then find something which suits that. Now, how you keep your boot on your foot is also a consideration. It's not the biggest one, of course. You know, you can get a bunch of different ways. Like you get laces here on this Dainese boot. On this Alpinestars boot, you get a speed lacing system, which is basically a bit easier to use, a bit quicker. And then on this Sidi Crossfire 3, you do get buckles. So now remember, each system has its own advantages, disadvantages. These laces, easy to use, we all know how they work, look pretty standard. They can come loose, they can get caught on things, not great overall. You don't see them as much these days. Then here with this speed kind of lacing system, you have to just lace it up. It's not too hard. It's a little bit different than with these, but it's also going to be protected by this cover here, which you can put in there. It's going to give protection not only to the laces, but also to like your shin. But it's going to have this little clip here, and that's going to make sure that it's not going to come undone. It's not going to get caught on anything. Then with these buckles, lots of protection. You know, you get lots of buckles on these Crossfires, but it's going to be a very strong system. It's fairly easy to use, and it has little protectors, so it's not going to just be flicking off when you're riding. So do keep in mind these systems, not the biggest consideration, but if you hate a system, it's going to be something that bothers you every time you take your boot off, put it on, whereas a good system you're typically not going to really notice. So small little thing, but also something to keep in mind. Alright guys, so we touched on protection and material quite a lot, especially when we spoke about materials and how those materials are going to help you out in different ways. But I have with me 3 boots with 3 varying levels of armor. I have the Dainese Street Biker Air, I have here the Dainese Dino Pro D1s, and the Alpinestars Tech 10s. Obviously, no obvious armor on this one, only a little bit on the side really and in the sole, so not a whole lot there. For external armor on the Dinos, we have a big slider. We have this TPU all over the leather, of course, sliders here on the ankles, on the back, lots of armor, so that's going to give you good protection. Then the Tech 10s, full of armor, full of protection, obviously going to do a good job there. But remember that just because it's full of armor doesn't mean it's necessarily going to protect you. Look for stuff like a CE/CAT rating. You can get the CE/CAT 2 rating, that's probably going to be the best you're going to get around. The 3 rating is very good, but most of these boots are going to come in at 2. But remember, the CE/CAT 1 is not going to offer you a whole lot of protection. Basically, try to get something with a 2 if you can. It's just much better overall. So if you guys are interested in picking up a set of motorcycle boots, make sure you check out championhelmets.com, and there you're going to find the lowest price guaranteed and also free shipping. Alright guys, this has been our guide to motorcycle boots. I hope that you found it a little bit useful. Now remember as well, if you want to learn anything more about these boots or anything from motorcycle gear, make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube, and that way we can keep you up to date. So guys, thanks for watching. I'm Chris from Champion Helmets, and I'll see you all next time.